I never imagined betrayal would come from inside my own home. If someone had warned me that the two people I trusted most in the world would be the ones to destroy me, I would have laughed. Not because I was naive, but because I genuinely believed that some lines could never be crossed. My sister was one of those lines. My fiancé was another. Growing up, my sister and I weren't just siblings. We were close. Not perfect, not inseparable, but close enough that I defended her even when she didn't deserve it. I made excuses for her sharp tongue, her jealousy, her need to compete. I told myself that siblings fight, that love doesn't always look soft. And then there was Ben. Ben was my safe place. The man I said yes to. The man I planned a future with. We were engaged, planning our wedding, discussing houses, children, timelines. He knew my fears, my insecurities, my boundaries. He knew my family, especially my sister. At first, their interactions seemed normal. Harmless, family-friendly, group conversations, inside jokes that didn't concern me. I was happy they got along. I thought it meant my future was solid, that my worlds were blending seamlessly. What I didn't notice at first were the patterns, the way she lingered longer than necessary, the way he defended her too quickly, the way conversations stopped when I entered the room. It was subtle, so subtle that questioning it made me feel paranoid, dramatic, insecure, and every time doubt crept in, I pushed it down because who suspects their own sister? They met more often under innocent excuses, planning surprises, running errands, talking about family things. If I asked questions, they laughed it off. You're overthinking. It's not that deep. She's your sister. That phrase became their shield. Then came the emotional shift. Ben became distant, irritable, less affectionate. He stopped sharing details about his day. When I tried to connect, he seemed distracted. Always on his phone, always tired, always unavailable. Meanwhile, my sister changed too. She started dressing differently around him, laughing louder, touching his arm when she spoke, making comments about how some people don't appreciate good men. I still didn't accuse them, because betrayal doesn't announce itself. It disguises itself as familiarity. The truth didn't come from confession. It came from accident. One evening, I borrowed his laptop because mine had died. I wasn't snooping, I had no reason to. But notifications popped up, messages he forgot to log out of, her name, heart emojis, late-night conversations, complaints about me. They didn't call it cheating, they called it love. They said they couldn't help it. They said they connected on a deeper level. They said I wouldn't understand. When I confronted them, neither of them cried. That hurt more than anything. My sister looked at me and said the words that still echo in my head. We didn't plan this. You shouldn't overreact. Overreact. As if my entire future hadn't just been stolen by the two people I trusted most. As if betrayal was an inconvenience. As if love justified everything. I walked out that night numb. Not screaming, not dramatic, just empty. And while they stood together, hands intertwined, convinced they were the heroes of their own story, I had no idea that karma was already quietly taking notes. They didn't even give me time to heal. Within weeks, they went public. Not with shame, not with hesitation, but with confidence. Smiling photos, casual introductions, soft launch posts that screamed we did nothing wrong. They rewrote the timeline so cleanly that anyone who didn't know the truth would think fate simply rearranged things. And the worst part? They expected me to understand. My sister called me first. Her voice was careful, almost rehearsed. She said she wanted to clear the air and hoped we could move forward as adults. She said feelings aren't controllable. That love doesn't follow rules. That one day, I'd thank her for not letting me marry someone who wasn't right for me. I remember sitting there in silence, phone pressed to my ear, wondering how someone could sound so calm while tearing open someone else's life. Then Ben reached out. He said he still cared about me, but not that way. He said what he felt for my sister was deeper, more natural, more honest. He said our relationship had been comfortable, while theirs was real. And then he said the sentence that broke something in me permanently. You're strong. You'll be fine. As if strength cancels grief. As if betrayal is easier when you're expected to survive it quietly. They didn't just want forgiveness. They wanted validation. They wanted me to smile at family gatherings, to show up to holidays, to act like my heart hadn't been ripped out and handed back to me labeled growth opportunity. Some people sided with them. They said things like, at least it happened before the wedding. They didn't mean to hurt you. You don't own people. No one asked me how it felt to wake up every day, knowing the future I planned was now being lived by someone else, someone who shared my blood. I stopped attending family events. I stopped answering messages. I isolated myself not because I was weak, but because I couldn't breathe in spaces where my pain was minimized. And that's when something unexpected happened. I met someone new. Not dramatically, not romantically, not even intentionally. Just a conversation, a laugh, a moment where I felt seen without being evaluated. He didn't know my story. He didn't ask for explanations. He didn't try to fix me. He was patient. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was surviving. I felt like I was healing. Meanwhile, my sister and Ben played house. They moved fast. Engagement whispers, shared finances, grand declarations about soulmates and everything happens for a reason. But love built on betrayal doesn't age well. And I could feel it, deep down, that the man she thought she stole wasn't the man she believed him to be. Because Ben had never been tested. Not really. And karma has a way of waiting until people are comfortable before revealing the truth. While my sister and Ben were building their so-called perfect life, I slowly began to rebuild mine. Not with vengeance in mind, not with scheming or plotting, but with peace and genuine happiness. The man I met wasn't flashy. He didn't try to impress. He wasn't my past or a replacement for Ben. He simply listened, laughed at my bad jokes, and let me exist without judgment. Over time, my trust grew, not blindly, but carefully, layer by layer. I learned to enjoy small moments again: coffee at sunrise, long walks, quiet conversations that had nothing to do with betrayal, money, or family drama. Meanwhile, my sister's life looked perfect on the surface. Engagements announced, wedding plans, family pictures where everyone smiled for the camera. But I started hearing whispers. Little things. Mutual friends noticed tension, a change in Ben's demeanor. The sparkle she'd boasted about in his eyes was fading. It started small: arguments over money, subtle insults disguised as jokes. Ben, the man who had been charming and confident with me, began to show a side I hadn't seen before: entitled, controlling, and impatient. The woman who thought she had stolen a dream realized she had married a nightmare. He resented her independence. Every decision she made he tried to manipulate. Every small expense became a battle. Where I had been his banker and shield, she had no such buffer. She tried to justify it, telling herself that love demanded compromise, that he's just stressed, it'll pass. But I watched from afar as the cracks grew wider, as tension simmered into daily resentment. Meanwhile, I lived my own life fully. My new partner didn't just heal me. He challenged me, inspired me, and encouraged me to dream bigger. I traveled, laughed, pursued projects I had shelved while nursing heartbreak, and for the first time, I felt untouchable in a way my sister never would again. Her perfect man began exposing himself slowly. His charm evaporated in the face of responsibility. The kindness she had once believed in was replaced by criticism and passive aggression. She started confiding to friends, never to me, of course, because pride still trapped her, but her words carried desperation. And karma had already started writing its chapters. Ben's financial recklessness caught up with him. Expenses exceeded income. Promises of wealth and stability were illusions. And the house they boasted about? Mortgaged beyond capacity. The wedding extravagance? Covered by debt she didn't realize he was secretly accruing. Slowly, the man who had seemed like a prize was nothing but a parasite, living off her trust, her planning, and her inherited stability. She had believed she won. She had believed love had chosen her. But love built on betrayal and illusions cannot survive truth. The honeymoon was over before it had even truly begun. Ben, the man who had seemed charming, confident, and perfect for her, began showing his true self in ways that could no longer be ignored. What had started as subtle criticism turned into verbal abuse. He mocked her decisions, questioned her intelligence, and belittled her accomplishments. Small at first, then increasingly blatant. Money became a weapon. Every purchase, every plan, every dream she tried to build was scrutinized, questioned, or outright denied. Ben would call her spending stupid, unnecessary, or dangerous, despite the fact that he had no real income to justify any financial authority. She had been the one funding their lifestyle, and he resented her for it. Friends noticed the change. The sparkle she once carried, the confidence she had flaunted after winning him, was fading. She stopped laughing freely. She stopped posting as often. Even her social media, once full of curated perfection, became guarded and calculated. And it wasn't just financial control. He began isolating her emotionally. Friends and family were subtly cut off, conversations redirected, visits postponed. Any source of external support was minimized so that she was trapped, reliant on him, and constantly gaslit into believing that she was the problem. Meanwhile, I was living the exact opposite life. I was happy, secure, in love, free to make my own choices without fear of judgment or betrayal. I traveled for work, laughed without guilt, and built a life grounded in honesty, respect, and real partnership. And slowly, the universe, or karma, if you want to call it that, started to balance the scales. Ben's recklessness began to catch up with him. Missed payments, overdue bills, mounting debt. He had promised her stability, but every claim he made was a lie, and the truth emerged in small, relentless ways. Late notices arrived, accounts were frozen, credit cards maxed. Friends began whispering to her, "Did he really ever earn this for you? Or was it all you?" Her desperation grew. She realized that the life she had thought she earned through love was actually a cage built on illusions and lies. The man she believed to be her soulmate was in reality a parasite who thrived on others' work and money. The emotional toll began to manifest. She became anxious, fearful, and paranoid. Every minor disagreement with him spiraled into weeks of tension. The joy she had imagined in marriage was replaced with dread. The person she thought she knew, the man who had seemed heroic and loving, was cruel, controlling, and abusive in ways she could no longer rationalize away. And the kicker? I was thriving while she was collapsing. Friends and acquaintances compared notes quietly. The contrast between our lives could not be ignored. My former happiness had returned, stronger and purer than ever. My new partner loved me honestly, supported me fully, and valued me in a way Ben never could. Her envy, her resentment, and her fear began to simmer. She had thought I was heartbroken, weak, and vulnerable. She had thought she would be the winner of a twisted game. But life has a way of exposing what was always true. Betrayal can create temporary satisfaction, but it cannot create lasting happiness. By now, the honeymoon glow was a distant memory, replaced entirely by tension, fear, and quiet despair. Ben's mask had fallen completely. The man who once seemed charming and confident revealed himself as entitled, cruel, and completely incapable of supporting the life he had promised. Every small financial decision became a battleground. Bills were ignored until late fees stacked up. Arguments over trivial purchases escalated into screaming matches. Friends and family who had once been invited freely were now met with excuses, delays, or outright avoidance. She realized too late that the soulmate she had fought for, the man she thought she was building a life with, was using her for her resources and stability. Ben became controlling in ways that mirrored the behavior I had endured, just in a different form. He criticized her appearance, her decisions, and even the way she raised the baby. The affection that had drawn her in initially was replaced by criticism, coldness, and emotional manipulation. The woman who thought she had won was now trapped in a gilded cage, one that had been built by her own misjudgment. Meanwhile, I flourished. My new relationship continued to deepen. My partner treated me with love, respect, and support, never asking me to compromise my boundaries or hide my feelings. We traveled, laughed, and planned a future grounded in trust and honesty. I didn't have to monitor anyone's moods or finances. I didn't have to protect myself from manipulation. My life was full of joy, growth, and freedom, everything she had imagined for herself but had traded for betrayal. And then karma, quiet, persistent, undeniable karma, began to manifest. Ben's reckless spending and laziness caught up with him. He lost investments he never understood. Debts piled up. Friends began distancing themselves after witnessing his behavior firsthand. The man my sister had idolized for his charm and confidence was crumbling under the weight of his own greed and irresponsibility. She tried to intervene, but every effort she made only fueled his resentment. He became angry, abusive, and unpredictable. The child they had brought into the world became the only source of stability in their chaotic home, but even that was overshadowed by the tension and fear that permeated their lives. My sister began to see the truth too late. She had married a man who was incapable of genuine love or partnership. She had believed the story Ben sold her, the illusion of romance, shared dreams, and mutual respect, but reality had a harsher lesson. He was a parasite, and she had provided everything while he gave nothing, and the contrast could not be ignored. My life, once broken by betrayal, was now thriving in ways that were almost painful for her to witness. I was happy, loved, and respected. She was trapped, constantly walking on eggshells, and dependent on a man who had never deserved her. By the end, it became clear. Some victories are fleeting, some betrayals are temporary, but the universe balances itself eventually. She had thought she had won my fiancé, but in reality she had caught the short end of a life built on lies, manipulation, and greed. Meanwhile, I lived freely, loved genuinely, and thrived without bitterness. The person who had tried to destroy me, both my fiancé and my sister, were now trapped by the consequences of their own choices. Karma had arrived quietly, inexorably, and perfectly.